I think Europe will run the 21st century, not in the sense of being the most powerful economic bloc in the world or the most powerful military bloc in the world. But what I argued in my book is that the European way of doing things is uniquely relevant to the era of globalization that we've entered at the moment. And I argue that the European Union is maybe the most important political innovation since the nation state was created 500 years ago. Because I think this experiment which we see in the European Union shows how countries can work together to solve problems that cut across borders. The countries have come together and created the biggest single market in the world, the most advanced ways of dealing with problems like environmental pollution, organized crime, terrorism across borders. And they've done it in a way that relies on international law rather than military competition and the balance of power between different countries. And that is a sort of revolution in international relations. And it's one which is both going to become more important within Europe itself as more and more countries join the European Union, and it continues to grow. Already has 500 million people, but eventually could end up with many more countries in it. But also it is being copied in all other parts of the world. In Latin America, they're developing a Mercosur. In Africa, the African Union. And even in East Asia, they're talking about building an East Asian community models on the European Union. If that happens, then every part of the world has got its own regional unions, and you see the development of new international organisations based on the principles with which the European Union is run. What you could see is a European century, not because Europe runs the world like an empire, but because the European way of doing things becomes the world's way of doing things. I both think that is likely to happen just because there's so many problems that cut across borders now. We need to have fresh thinking about how we deal with them. And the European Union is the most innovative and flexible way of dealing with them. And secondly, I think it would be a much better world if it's run like that than the status quo. So I hope I'm right as well. I think that, like a lot of imperial projects, the European Union is doomed to carry on expanding. But it's not something which will happen in one go. But very few people, in fact, no one 20 years ago would have predicted that there'd be 27 member states in the European Union and it would stretch as far as as places like Estonia. And I think in 20, 30 years' time, it's quite likely that there'll be a whole new swathe of countries in the European Union, like Turkey, Ukraine, Moldova, maybe even Belarus one day. But at the moment, just as we've seen in the past, after every wave of enlargement, there's a lot of skepticism from citizens. People turn against the idea of further expansion. There is a pause going on and people are quite skeptical about it. But I think there is a natural tendency to look outwards because each wave of countries that joins the European Union wants to make sure that its neighbours get in as well, because it will make them more peaceful, more democratic, and it will increase their economic opportunities. And that's why the people who are keenest for the European Union to carry on enlarging are those countries at the periphery. It's Poland that wants Ukraine in because it's their neighbour that is outside of the European Union. I think people are holding their breath. They don't want to, they were slightly burnt by their experience when Putin came in, when all European leaders rushed to Moscow to embrace him very quickly and to show that they had developed a special relationship with him. And then what they found shortly afterwards was that Russia was pursuing a lot of policies which weren't necessarily that compatible with the way that the European Union wanted things to go. And what most European leaders are doing now is trying to be friendly, to show him respect, but to judge him by his deeds rather than by his words, and to see how he will develop as a political leader, whether he'll be a kind of mini-me of Vladimir Putin, or whether he will actually live up to some of his more liberal-sounding rhetoric. And the jury's still very much out.